What's going on, guys? Jason Maxwell here from jmaxfitness.com, and I help guys get bigger, leaner, and stronger. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to track macros. Now, a lot of people come up to me and they say, Jason, I want to start flexible dieting. I want to start tracking my macros, but when I go to track it, like, how do I know how much is in this? How do I go about it? How do I keep measuring foods? How do I measure foods that are all these recipes? It just seems like too crazy and too complicated, and I think I'm just going to screw it up. And when I say to them, it looks like it can be a daunting task. It's like when you start anything new, it seems like it can be very, very difficult, and it seems like you have a lot of things to do. But in reality, it just takes a bit of practice, and then you can go ahead and do it. Luckily, we have technology and apps such as MyFitnessPal, which makes things way easier to do. When I first started tracking my macros, I was using, old technology. I had to look up what everything was on the internet, and then I had to keep it in a spreadsheet and just write it down and let it add up on its own. So it was a pain in the ass. Whenever I ate something, I had to write it down on paper, and then when I got home, I would go on my computer and I would write it into the spreadsheet and track it. Luckily, you guys don't have to do that anymore. And if you think about it, like, holy crap, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, when bodybuilders wanted to track their macros, it was a pain in the ass because they didn't have computers. They would have to write it down in a notebook, look up how much each ingredient was for calories, carbs, proteins, and fats in like this encyclopedia. There was a special encyclopedia that had the macros for each different food, and that's how they would track them, all manually by hand. It probably took them hours out of their day. Now for you to track your macros, it's probably only going to take you like maybe 10 to 15 minutes per day to track your macros, and probably even less once you get really good at it. But in order to get really good at it, I've kind of laid it out so you have a few different habits that you have to achieve. So it's habit-based because it is like a big thing to learn, but if you learn one thing at a time and make it a little bit of a habit at a time, well then this huge daunting task of tracking your macros actually becomes something very easy to achieve, and it actually becomes a habit of yours. So it's not even going to feel like it's work. You're just going to be in the habit of tracking your macros and doing everything properly, and then that way you can, instead of like wasting your energy and figuring out your macros because it's already a habit, you can use that energy in the gym or to accomplish anything else in your life. But it comes down to creating habits for yourself, and that's how I'm going to teach you how to track macros in this episode. So what I've done is I've broken it down into 5 different steps. Now these steps, if you do it one at a time, take it week by week. So within 5 weeks, you'll be tracking macros with ease. But it all starts with these 5 different steps. Step 1, I want you to get in the habit of tracking your macros. So here's a story for you. I had a woman come to me who wanted some help to lose weight. So I told her to only do one thing in the start. All I wanted her to do was get used to tracking her macros in MyFitnessPal. So you get the app MyFitnessPal, put it on your phone, and then I told her, I was like, it doesn't need to be accurate. I just want you to get in the habit of writing down what you're eating, and the easiest way of doing that is with MyFitnessPal. So let's say you had a tuna sandwich for lunch, you could just look up tuna sandwich on MyFitnessPal and add it in there and just get in the habit of doing that. Now, it might not be that accurate because, someone's tuna sandwich might have, a full can of tuna in it, while another person's tuna sandwich might have just half a can of tuna. But I was like, don't be accurate. I just want you to track it and get in the habit of doing so every day. Well, I didn't give her any macro targets to hit or anything like that. But what happened was she just started getting in the habit of tracking her macros. And within a week, she lost something like 2 pounds. And I asked her, I was like, why do you think you lost this weight when the only habit I gave you was to just get in the habit of tracking your macros? And she told me, she was like, well, because I was tracking my macros, I had to actually think about what I'm eating. And it made me second guess some of the bad decisions I was making in the start. But because now that I have to track everything I eat, I'm like, well, I don't want to have to write that because I feel kind of bad that I ate all of that. So instead of feeling bad about eating it, I just don't eat it in the start, and then I don't have to worry about it. So it's actually helping me lose weight, even though it's something so small and it's something that's so easy for me to do. So basically, when you're tracking your macros, I just want you to get in the habit of actually doing it, because the hardest part is just tracking your macros every day and being consistent with it. Because some people, they'll track their macros perfectly for one day, and then the next 6 days they don't feel like tracking their macros, so they're like, well, I'm not tracking my macros, so I'm just going to eat whatever the hell I want. But then you're not really flexible dieting. You're just doing something once every week, and it doesn't really do anything, because you need to be consistent, going consistent, and consistency pays off, and that's where you get the results, guys. So first, for the very first week, I just want you to every day. So I just want you to get in the habit of every time you eat, write down what you eat with the app, and then you'll be good for a week. And then after doing this for 1 week, you'll start to develop it as a habit, and then we can build upon that habit with step 2. So this leads us to step 2, which is get in the habit of measuring your food. So when you first start putting your food into MyFitnessPal, you'll notice it asks you how much of the amount of food that you ate, because you need to be pretty accurate. So with step 2, we want to be measuring your food. So in order to do this, you can either measure it with measuring cups, or you can measure it with a kitchen scale. So you just take your food and you weigh it, and then whether it's cooked, uncooked, with skin, with bones, something like this, I want you to keep in mind all of these variables, weigh it, and then look for that specific food in MyFitnessPal. So for instance, if you eat a full chicken leg on the bone with skin and it's cooked, you're going to measure it, and then you're going to go into MyFitnessPal and you're going to look for chicken leg cooked with skin, bone in, and then you input how much it weighed, and then MyFitnessPal tracks that very accurately. More accurately if you just, winged it and just said, hey, this is a chicken leg. Get it? Winged it. But anyway, so you want to get in the habit of weighing your food or measuring it with a measuring cup. Now, after you do this for a few months, you probably won't even need to weigh your food or measure it anymore, because you will know exactly how, you will get very, very good at estimating how much, a chicken leg weighs or a chicken breast weighs, or how many cups of oats did I eat right there, and things like that. It gets really, really easy. And on top of this, when you are inputting your food into MyFitnessPal, you can also scan the barcode if it's a processed food and it has its own barcode. You scan the barcode and it automatically inputs the macros in there as well. So that's a little bit of a bonus. But step 2 is I want you to get in the habit of measuring that food so that your amounts are accurate. Now notice we're not even looking at specific macros here. We're not telling you can eat this many calories. You're still allowed to eat whatever the hell you want. I just want you to get in the habit of measuring the food so you know how much it weighs, how much food is in there, and then inputting it into MyFitnessPal. So for your second week, your habit is to measure the food. And that leads us to step 3, calories. So now that you're in the habit of, tracking how much you eat every day and then putting in the correct amounts, which means weighing it and measuring the food, now that that's a habit, now we're going to actually try to be on track with our calories. So in order to figure out your calories, if you want to lose fat, just start out with body weight in pounds times 10 to 12. So if you're 200 pounds, you'll eat 2,000 to 2,400 calories per day in order to lose weight. Alternatively, if you want to build muscle, use body weight in pounds times 16 to 18. And now once you have this calorie target, I want you to be within 5% of this calorie target by the end of the day. So this does take a little bit of practice, because some days you're going to eat way less and some days you're going to want to eat way more. So what you need to do is, when you're tracking your calories and you're inputting your food and you're inputting the right measurements, you can see, okay, I've eaten this many calories per day. That means I have a bit of a calorie budget, and I don't want to go over that budget, but I want to be on target to be within 5% of that budget. So For example, when I say within 5%, let's say you're only supposed to eat 2,000 calories per day, then I want you to be in the range of 1,900 to 2,100 calories by the end of the day. Don't go out of this range, because then you're not going to get the results that you want. You need to be on track. So it's consistency here. So it takes a bit of practice to get within this calorie range per day. But once you've done it 7 days straight, you'll probably already start to notice, either some fat loss or some muscle gain. And all we're talking about is calories here. But once you have done this 7 days straight, then you can graduate on to step 2, which introduces protein. Now, step 4, as I mentioned, is protein. So you've built the foundation of tracking everything you eat. You're measuring it all. You're getting within 5% of your total daily calories. Now it's time to make sure that you're hitting your protein requirements. So as a general rule, you cannot go wrong with body weight in pounds times 1. So if you're 200 pounds, you eat 200 grams of protein per day. And that's your minimum. So calories would be within 5%, but you would want to also get a minimum amount of protein. So the way to do that is to make sure that your diet is including, extra lean ground beef, chicken breast, turkey breast, egg whites, lean pork, white fish, rabbit, wild game, and protein powder, and even non-fat Greek yogurt. Things like this are going to help you get your protein, especially if they're very lean, which means a high percentage of their calories are coming from protein. And that's going to allow you to hit your body weight times 1 in grams by the end of the day. Now, once you hit this target, it doesn't mean you have to stop eating protein. If you want to keep eating protein, by all means, go ahead and eat more protein. I don't care. It's up to you, as long as you hit that minimum. So calories are within the 5% range, but you also at the same time want to get your minimum amount of protein. So the remaining calories are going to come from fats and carbs, but you don't need to track them. You just need to make sure that you're getting your minimum protein and you're being within 5% of your calorie range. And that brings us to step 5, which is the last step, which means getting your fiber in. Now, tracking all your calories is great, and eating whatever you want is great, but if you're not getting enough fiber, there's a good chance you're either not pooping for days on end, or you're having a bunch of diarrhea. Both of these things suck. We want the diet to be sustainable, and in order for it to be sustainable, we want the diet to be healthy, which means you need to get your fiber. Now, when I say get your fiber, I don't mean, eating all brand cereal and getting high amounts of brand and eating fiber supplements. No. When I'm talking fiber, I'm talking simple fiber, which comes from non-starchy vegetables. So if you think about it, like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, people living, they weren't walking around eating all brand cereal every morning in order to have solid poops. They weren't doing that. They were getting their vegetables. And that's a great way for you to get your solid poops, keep the stool together, as well as get, nutrient or micronutrients and even some minerals and vitamins in there as well. So when I say non-starchy vegetables, just think of, your typical vegetables: leafy greens, broccoli, cauliflower, tomatoes, artichokes, asparagus, string beans, cabbage, celery. The list goes on. I said tomatoes, but technically they're a fruit, but, think of them as a non-starchy vegetable, and make sure that you're getting at least 3 cups of these non-starchy vegetables per day on a minimum. Do you need to track them? Not really. It all depends. If you need to be consistent with it. So you can't just be like one day tracking your vegetables and the next day not tracking your vegetables. It doesn't work like that. You either do or you don't. I recommend don't doing it, because then it saves you a lot of time, because the vegetables are going to be a minimum amount of calories anyways. And then if you're not losing or gaining weight or reaching your goal, then you can adjust your total daily calories, change them up or down so that you're hitting that goal. But yeah, you get the picture. Just make sure that you're getting at least 3 cups of non-starchy vegetables per day, and then that'll take care of getting the fiber that you need in your diet when it comes to flexible dieting. So if you look at it, everything we've talked about, tracking your macros on a regular basis, getting in the habit of that, measuring your food, getting the right calories, getting the minimum amount of protein, as well as getting 3 cups of non-starchy vegetables per day. So carbs and fats, like where does that come in? I recommend not tracking, like getting specific numbers for these. As long as you're doing these 5 steps, you're going to get the results that you want. Now, the remaining calories are either going to come from carbs or fats, but the way I like to do it is, me personally, what works really well for me is to eat low carb during the day and higher fat during the day, and then in the evening eating lower fat and higher carb. Generally, a lot of people, what they'll say is, if carbs go up, fats go down, and vice versa. And if you look at the math, all it really means is you don't want to be going over your calories for the day. So you're getting your protein. So let's say protein stays constant. If we're eating more carbs, then the amount of fats we eat naturally needs to go down in order to make sure that we don't go over those calorie daily requirements. So you want to be within that calorie range. So the same thing goes is if your fat goes up, your carbs need to go down, just because if you're eating a lot of carbs and a lot of fats and a lot of protein, what happens is you end up just eating too high of calories and you're not within your calorie range. So that's why you don't really need to think about carbs and fats, because as long as you're within 5% of your calories and as long as you're getting your minimum protein, then it doesn't really matter. So in the end, if you want to learn how to track macros, it's best to split it up into small habits and set yourself up for success. So there's those 5 steps. And if you take 1 step per week, then after 5 weeks, you'll be tracking your macros with ease, and it's just going to be a habit, really. So it's not even going to feel like work to you. It's going to be the easiest diet you ever do, but you got to lay down the groundwork. Because remember, you're setting yourself up for long-term success. So if you can make tracking macros into something that's second nature, then it won't stress you out. You'll be able to stick with it, and you can finally be a flexible dieter. If you notice what I said earlier, as long as you're getting, your vegetables, as long as you're getting your protein, as long as you're within your calorie range, you can basically eat whatever you want. I like to say eat 60 to 80%, bro diet or clean foods, which is just like meat, vegetables, potatoes, just things like that, simple, clean foods. And then the remaining amount of your calories can come from things like ice cream, pizza, chocolate, whatever you want, really. But as long as you're sticking to those 5 steps above, you can be very flexible and you can be tracking your macros with ease, getting the results you want, loving life, and finally having a diet that works for you, not for just 1 week, not for just 1 month, not just for 1 year, but years and years and years, and basically for the rest of your life. Guys, I'm Jason Maxwell, here from JMax Fitness, and I'll talk to you guys next time. So if you like this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the JMax Fitness channel. And below in the comments, let me know what you thought of this video and let me know what you'd like to see in future videos.